Bonjour à tous. Hi everyone. Bienvenue à la conférence de presse. Nous avons avec nous les sénateurs Pierre-Hugues Boisvenu, Lucie Moncion, ainsi que le député Michael Cooper, and with them our guests Mark Farrant and Tina Daenzer. So we will be taking your remarks and after we'll take questions. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, good evening everyone. Bonjour à tout le monde. C'est une nouvelle fois un privilège pour moi de prendre la parole aujourd'hui devant vous en compagnie de mon collègue Michael Cooper, député de la circonscription Saint-Albert-Edmonton, de ma collègue la sénatrice Lucie Moncion, de M. Mark Farrant, ancien juré et président de la Commission canadienne des jurés, ainsi que Mme Tina Daenzer, une ancienne jurée qui a participé au procès de Paul Bernardo. Hier, j'ai déposé en première lecture au Sénat du Canada le projet de loi S-206, loi modifiant le Code criminel sur la divulgation de renseignements pour les jurés, un projet de loi très important que j'avais d'ailleurs déjà déposé lors de la dernière législature et qui est mort au feuilleton dû à la dissolution du Parlement, comme vous le savez, en août dernier. Ce projet de loi, je le rappelle, modifie l'article 649 du Code criminel et consiste à éliminer les barrières légales inscrites au Code criminel qui limitent encore, l'accès à du soutien médical aux jurés souhaitant consulter un professionnel de la santé lorsqu'ils souffrent de traumatisme dû à la participation à un procès criminel. La sénatrice Moncion, critique du projet de loi et j'oserais même dire co-marraine, et moi-même souhaitons livrer nos discours en seconde lecture la semaine prochaine afin que ce projet de loi puisse être adopté rapidement. J'aimerais une nouvelle fois la remercier de son soutien indéfectible et surtout sa patience à cette importante cause qui la touche, elle, personnellement, due à son expérience personnelle, comme je dis, comme membre du jury il y a maintenant 30 ans et qui encore aujourd'hui a un impact sur sa vie. Ce projet de loi s'inspire de la recommandation numéro 4 émise par le Comité permanent de la justice et des droits de la personne de la Chambre des communes dans son rapport intitulé « Mieux soutenir des jurés au Canada ». Nous savons tous que le jury est à la base même de notre système de justice et de les protéger, à mon avis, est une responsabilité indéniable du Canada. Au cours de cette étude, le Comité de la justice a entendu de nombreux témoignages d'anciens jurés dont la vie a profondément été changée à jamais en raison de témoignages perturbants qu'ils ont entendus durant leur procès. Certains d'entre eux ont souffert de problèmes de santé mentale sévères, tels que des troubles de stress post-traumatique. Selon eux, la règle du secret s'applique aux jurés, les empêche d'obtenir des services de santé mentale dont ils ont besoin. En effet, l'article 649 du Code criminel, tout jury qui divulgue pendant sa vie, toute sa vie, tout renseignement relatif aux délibérations du jury, même un professionnel de la santé mentale, commet une infraction criminelle. Cette règle du secret est profondément injuste pour ces hommes et ces femmes qui ne font qu'accomplir leurs devoirs civiques. Être juré dans un procès criminel comme celui du criminel Paul Bernardo peut être extrêmement traumatisant et peut laisser des séquelles pour la vie. Voilà précisément ce que ce projet de loi-là vise à changer en établissant une exception limitée à la règle du secret afin que les anciens jurés qui ont des problèmes de santé mentale découlant de leur fonction puissent parler de tous les aspects de ce rôle à un professionnel de la santé. L'intégrité de la règle du secret professionnel sera protégée parce que, encore une fois, la divulgation se fera dans un contexte strictement confidentiel après le procès, et que ces professionnels sont aussi liés par le secret. Cette exception donnera la possibilité aux jurés, aux anciens jurés, d'aborder des sujets essentiels avec leurs professionnels de la santé afin d'obtenir du soutien dont ils ont besoin et auquel ils ont droit. Si une seule modification du Code criminel peut faire l'unanimité, eh bien, c'est sûrement celle qu'on vous présente ce matin. Je suis persuadé que la 44e législature, sera la bonne pour faire adopter ce projet de loi et soulager la souffrance mentale de milliers de jurés au Canada. Ce projet de loi est déposé pour la 4e fois. Je le répète, pour la 4e fois. Je pense que le Sénat doit agir et c'est la mission que nous sommes donnée, la sénatrice Moncion et moi, soit de faire adopter ce projet de loi par nos pairs le plus rapidement possible. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the presence of two guests, Madame Daenzer and Monsieur Farrant, who fight every day for the rights of jurors. Mrs. Daenzer and Monsieur Farrant traveled all the way from Toronto to once again, I think for the fourth time, to support that bill. I thank them for their unconditional commitment. Je passerai maintenant la parole à mon collègue, M. Cooper, le parrain du projet de loi C-417, qui est à l'origine de ce projet de loi au Sénat. Michael?
Thank you very much, Senator Boisvenu. Michael Cooper, Member of Parliament for St. Albert, Edmonton. And it really is an honor to be the House of Commons sponsor of Bill S-206, introduced yesterday by Senator Boisvenu with the support of Senator Moncion. As Senator Boisvenu noted, this bill arose from a House of Commons Justice Committee study, the first ever study around juror supports and juror mental health. I served on the Justice Committee during that study, and in the course of that study, we heard from former jurors, including Mr. Farrant and Ms. Daenzer, who courageously told their stories about how jury service has forever changed their lives. We heard about the horrific evidence that they endured. We heard about the stress and anxiety that it caused them. We heard about the difficulties that jury service caused in their relationships with others, including family members and co-workers, and we heard about the mental health challenges that they suffered from arising from their jury service. And out of that, they said that it was difficult to get the help that they needed because of the jury secrecy rule. Imagine going through all of that, but being unable to talk about all aspects of jury service, unable to talk about the deliberation process, which is often one of the most stressful aspects of jury service. Indeed, at the Justice Committee, we heard evidence from Dr. Sonia Chopra, who has undertaken extensive work around former jurors, who in her research noted that out of the top 10 stressors, 7 out of the 10 arise from the deliberation process. How can one get better when one is unable to talk about the core of their injury? That is precisely where this legislation comes in. It is modeled after legislation in the Australian state of Victoria. It carves out a very narrow exception to the jury secrecy rule, namely that a former juror who is suffering from mental health issues arising from their jury service can talk about all aspects of their jury service, including the deliberation process, with a medical professional. As Senator Boisvenu noted, it protects the integrity of the jury secrecy rule, including the finality of a verdict, the sanctity of the deliberation process, and respect for the privacy of other jurors, while ensuring that a former juror who is suffering from mental health issues can get the help that they need. I introduced Bill C-417 in the 42nd Parliament. This bill received unanimous support at all legislative stages. Unfortunately, there was insufficient time to pass it through the Senate before the 2019 election. Immediately after the 2019 election, I reached out to Senator Boisvenu, and Senator Boisvenu, along with Senator Moncion, championed Bill S-207. But unfortunately, again, we weren't able to get it through because due to COVID, the Senate was unable to take up many private members' bills. We're now in the 44th Parliament. If ever there was a bill in which everyone can agree on, it is surely this bill. There has been literally no arguments that have been tendered against this piece of legislation. This bill has been studied thoroughly at the Justice Committee. I believe the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee began to study this as well. It's time to simply get it done. Jurors play an integral role in the administration of justice in Canada, often at a considerable personal cost. We owe it to them to see the speedy passage of this legislation. And with that, I will turn it over to Senator Moncion, who has been a great champion of this legislation and who can speak to jury service and the impact that that caused her from a very personal perspective. So with that, Senator Moncion.
Qui vise à permettre aux anciens jurys de bénéficier d'un fort appui ensemble sur les allégeances politiques et partisanes. Notamment, le projet de loi vise à mettre en œuvre une recommandation unanime du Comité permanent de la justice et des droits de la personne de la Chambre dans le rapport intitulé « Mieux soutenir les jurés au Canada ». Est-ce que le micro fonctionne?
Je continue à partir d'où j'étais rendue? OK.
Désolée de vous avoir interrompu comme ça, mais
Oui, c'est bien.
je pense que
Merci.
vous pouvez recommencer. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, je recommence. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui pour annoncer le dépôt du projet de loi S-206 qui vise à permettre aux anciens jurys de recourir aux services de professionnels de la santé pour assouvir les souffrances liées à l'exercice de ce devoir civique. La modification législative proposée par le sénateur Boisvenu bénéficie d'un fort appui qui transcende les allégeances politiques et partisanes. Notamment, le projet de loi vise à mettre en œuvre une recommandation unanime du Comité permanent de la justice et des droits de la personne de la Chambre et des communes dans le rapport intitulé « Mieux soutenir les jurés au Canada ». This bill was first drafted and introduced by MP Michael Cooper, and I would like to congratulate him and thank him for having brought this initiative forward in the first place. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we hope that you can once again convince your colleagues of the House of Commons to have this bill passed expeditiously, and we'll try the same with the Senate. Comme l'a mentionné le sénateur Boisvenu, en 1989, alors que j'étais mère de 2 jeunes enfants et sur le marché du travail, j'ai été convoquée pour exercer la fonction de jury lors d'un procès pour meurtre au premier degré. Suite à ce procès, j'ai souffert du syndrome de stress post-traumatique, une condition qui a eu des conséquences dans toutes les sphères de ma vie, y compris au sein de ma famille. De par mon expérience, je peux vous assurer que ce projet de loi est absolument nécessaire et essentiel pour les anciens jurys qui souffrent en silence. Les jurys deviennent des victimes collatérales du système de justice et le code criminel perpétue leur souffrance. Everyone's mental health matters. Yet, from a legal point of view, jurors are part of a special category of people who are denied complete health care. Currently, the secrecy rule prohibits a juror from disclosing information related to deliberation to anyone, including a healthcare professional. This needs to change, and more attention needs to be brought to the mental health and well-being of jurors. Je remercie infiniment le sénateur Boisvenu pour le dépôt de ce projet de loi et je salue son dévouement à cette cause qui me tient grandement à cœur. I would also like to sincerely thank former jurors and advocates Mark Farrant and Tina Daenzer for their hard work in advocating on behalf of jurors and former jurors, and for their work for the Canadian Juries Commission, which is so paramount to improving jurors and former jurors' mental health. Les jurys sont une partie intégrante et essentielle du système de justice canadien et de l'accès à la justice au Canada. Comme parlementaires, nous devons porter une attention particulière à leur bien-être. Le projet de loi S-206 permettra d'aider les Canadiennes et les Canadiens appelés à exercer la fonction de jury à mieux vivre et à mieux survivre à cette expérience. Ayant été déposé hier pour la 4e fois au Sénat, j'espère sincèrement que cette fois-ci est la bonne et que le projet de loi sera adopté au Sénat et à la Chambre des communes dans les meilleurs délais. Je vous remercie de votre attention et je passe maintenant la parole à M. Mark Farrant.
Thank you, Senator Boisvenu, Senator Moncion, and MP Michael Cooper for inviting us here today. My name is Mark Farrant, and I'm the founder, CEO of the Canadian Juries Commission, a national not-for-profit representing and supporting Canadians on jury duty and coroner's inquests. I served as jury foreman in a graphic first-degree murder trial in 2014 that changed my life, leaving me with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Jury duty is a civic duty, but not a duty to suffer psychologically. It is our collective duty to ensure that jurors are supported after serving their civic duty and their country. But sadly, we have let many jurors down. Core to the mandate of the Canadian Juries Commission is improving and making available supports for jurors after their jury service, which includes access to trauma-informed mental health support. Serving on a jury can be an extremely rewarding experience, with many jurors reflecting positively on their role in delivering justice and supporting their community. For some, though, jury duty can be extremely difficult, traumatic, and life-altering. Serving on a jury is mandatory and is listed among the rights and responsibilities of Canadian citizenship. But jury duty is not a vocation. Jury duty has no training manual. There's no preparation. Many jurors are unprepared for their jury service and the magnitude of the evidence presented to them and the challenges of increasingly complicated trials. Many jurors have described deliberation as the single most difficult and stressful moment in their lives, deciding the fate of an individual's life, delivering justice to victims, all within the confines of the law. For some, this is life-changing, leaving them with depression, anxiety, feelings of guilt, remorse, loneliness that lasts a lifetime. This is made even worse by the jury secrecy rules, which forbids jurors from discussing the trial with anyone, including a mental health therapist or practitioner. How can someone get to the root of their trauma and build towards healing if they are legally forbidden from discussing the very thing that has impacted them? Sadly, jurors have suffered in silence for decades, isolated, living with the burden of their duty. Bill S-206 is a common-sense amendment to the Criminal Code that is long overdue. It comes from a recommendation in the landmark 2018 House of Commons Justice Committee report and has been supported by the legal community and the judiciary. Bill S-206 is an investment in mental health and the justice system, and most importantly, removes a legal restriction that has prevented jurors from speaking and seeking counseling and having a full and open conversation. I want to thank Senator Boisvenu, Senator Moncion, and MP Michael Cooper for their steadfast support for this bill and commitment to see it pass in Parliament. Thank you.
Is it working now? I'd also like to thank Senator Boisvenu, Senator Moncion, and MP Michael Cooper for inviting us here today. My name is Tina Daenzer. I was juror number 1 on the 1995 trial of Paul Bernardo. This was a trial that changed not only my life, but the life of every Canadian who watched this take place in the media. It affected hundreds and hundreds of people's mental health. I'm currently the CFO of the Canadian Juries Commission. Juries are a unique institution It requires ordinary citizens with no legal training to hear evidence, make sense of conflicting facts, and apply legal rules to reach a verdict. While it's true, a small percentage of jurors have suffered extensive mental health trauma like myself due to graphic evidence, one of the top sources of stress of jurors is actually related to the verdict and the deliberation process. So for many, once the trial ends, the agony begins. Feelings of guilt, shame, regret often set in, feelings you're told not to talk about with anyone. Because Section 649 of the Criminal Code prohibits jurors discussing this stress-inducing aspect of the trial, they're unable to mitigate its effects, often exacerbating the stress. I would like to thank Senator Boisvenu very much for sponsoring this bill, S-206, so that this Section 649 of the Criminal Code can be revised, allowing jurors to seek mental health counseling for all aspects of the jury. I'd like to thank again Senator Moncion and MP Michael Cooper for championing this cause, which is so important to all Canadians, because if you love this country and believe in its justice system, as a citizen, you have to want to participate. And if you participate, you should be looked after to ensure your mental health is not compromised. I now give it back to Senator Boisvenu for closing remarks.
Je pense que les témoignages de la sénatrice Moncion, Mme Daenzer et M. Farrant nous donnent une perspective différente, comme législateur, du fardeau qu'on impose à des citoyens ordinaires qui, une fois qu'ils quittent l'enceinte d'un palais de justice, sont laissés à eux-mêmes. Nous n'avons pas le droit de ne pas agir. Nous n'avons pas le droit de laisser ces gens-là seuls avec les séquelles d'avoir rempli un honnête mandat de citoyen. Alors, j'implore le Sénat, mes collègues du Sénat, d'abord à ne pas faire de partisanerie sur ce projet de loi-là, d'une part, et surtout à le prioriser au Comité des affaires juridiques pour faire en sorte qu'au mois de juin prochain, on puisse dire aux Canadiens, futurs jurés, nous allons être là pour vous. Merci. Alors, s'il y a des questions, on serait prêts, je pense, l'un ou l'autre. If there's some question, I think myself and my colleague, also M. Farrant and Daenzer, are ready to answer.
Merci beaucoup. On va voir s'il y a des questions dans la salle. N'ayant pas de questions dans la salle, on va aller à la téléconférence. Donc, opérateur, c'est à vous.
Merci. Veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 maintenant si vous avez une question. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. Our first question is from Tom Korski from Blacklock's Reporter. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Thank you. For whoever chooses to answer, incidentally, I'm assuming that legal text of S-206 is identical to S-207 and C-417. My question, whenever we see the lapsing of private bills that mean a lot to a small group of people and don't cost the rest of us anything, it usually means there's pushback somewhere. This goes way back before the pandemic. So why is there, or do you accept the premise that there is, pushback somewhere? Somebody doesn't want this bill to pass. They have no interest in having this bill passed. Can anyone comment?
Est-ce que le micro fonctionne? Oui. Well, for myself, that kind of bill should be a government bill, not a private bill. Because I think it's not a matter of private life, private interest. It's a matter of national interest. So last time, I think we need more time to pass that bill. We have a lack of time. We have a specific government bill who was our study before that one. So we have time. We don't have any time to study that bill. But as we tabled that bill at the beginning of that session. I think we have a lot of time now. We have a few months ahead of us to be sure that the bill will be sent very rapidly to the Justice Committee at the Senate, and after that, send it to the House of Commons. I think we have time now, and we don't have any excuse to not adopt that bill in the Senate. Senator Moncion.
Just to add,
Senator, forgive me, I can't see you. Please go ahead.
just to add to this comment, to Senator Boisvenu's comment, the fact that the pandemic hit, we had constraints on the bills that could be studied. And this is why the opportunity for this bill is now, because we are now back in person, and we will be trying our best to expedite the work on this bill so that it goes to committee and comes back to the Senate, and with a very optimistic goal to have it passed by June 2022.
And
So
just
Senator,
sorry, I will just
thank you.
further
Go ahead, please,
answer.
please.
Well, let me just say that one of the challenges is we often undertake studies in Parliament, and we write reports with important recommendations, and then those reports sit on a shelf and collect dust. I really was moved by the testimony of those former jurors, including Mr. Farrant and Ms. Daenzer, when they came before the Justice Committee. And I was determined to see that the key recommendation that fell exclusively within the jurisdiction of Parliament, namely amending Section 649 of the Criminal Code, would be implemented. And that's why I moved forward with introducing Bill 417 at the earliest opportunity that I could in the 42nd Parliament. It should have been a no-brainer for the government to have brought this bill forward in the form of a government bill following the issuance of that report. It didn't happen. But that being said, I will give the government credit, because at every step of the way when I did introduce Bill C-417, they supported the initiative. We got it through the Justice Committee expeditiously. The government allowed debate to collapse, and we got it to the Senate at the earliest opportunity. We couldn't get it done because of the election, and we couldn't get it done because of COVID. I believe that it will get done in this Parliament. It needs to get done. And one thing that I really have appreciated about this bill is that there has been a cross-party consensus. It's not just me, it's not just Senator Boisvenu, it's not just Senator Moncion. It was Murray Rankin, a former NDP MP, who seconded my bill. It was Alistair McGregor, NDP Member of Parliament, whose idea was to initiate the study in the first place. Anthony Haushofer, the former chair of the Justice Committee, has been a strong advocate of this. So we just need the time to get it through both places, and I know it will happen in this Parliament.
So for Mr. Cooper or Senator Boisvenu, I take your point. By the way, I'm assuming the legal text is the same as the previous bills. But you didn't mention the Department of Justice. Mr. Weber had a bill, for instance, to have organ donor checkoff on a T1 general tax form. Who would oppose that? Everyone loves that bill. Year after year, it has failed until the CRA says in committee, they made it clear. They're the big machine, and they don't want MPs monkeying with their tax forms. It was that plain. So you don't have any sense the Department of Justice has this opinion that, look, we're not having MPs and senators walk off the street to rewrite the jury system just on principle, just because they didn't come up with the idea. There's no pushback from the department, in your opinion?
Not to my knowledge.
Merci beaucoup. Prochaine question.
Thank you. Our next question is from Tom Perry from CBC News. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Hello. Thanks for taking my questions. And forgive me if this is a bit of an obvious question, but I guess, is this legislation based on the principle like a physician client confidentiality. I guess the underlying idea of this legislation is that even if someone from a jury were to disclose what happened in deliberations to the therapist, that the therapist would not be allowed to, tell anybody else or say, what that person told them. Is that really what's underlying this?
Absolutely.
So I guess I don't know if this is a follow-up, but why that seems fairly obvious to me. So what do you think has been the holdup in getting the system to recognize that?
Personally, I think it was finding the right people to advocate for this change. And I think it was not something that was top of mind at some point, but now I think it is getting to be a top of mind issue because of all the mental health issues that come from jury duty. And before, and I think more because people were not talking about it, because we were always told that we were not allowed to speak about this to anyone. So we were confronted with the secrecy rule that hindered our power to seek help from professionals. Now we bring this forward, and I thank Mark and Tina for really working hard on this to bring it to the forefront and have this issue taken care of. And the other point here is we do believe and trust that our parliamentarians understand that speaking to a physician as a client, confidentiality rules stay. And removing this, changing the Section 649 will not break the rules of secrecy, nor will jurors start divulging a lot of information. So I hope this answers your question, but I really believe that physician and client trust is paramount, and it is respected, and it's always been respected.
If you would, I just want to add a short comment. We're going to do next week, I think, second reading, and I think we're going to take time to really explain to our colleague the urgent to adopt that bill, because every day there's some trials across Canada. There's people who we let them down because lack of services. So I think on the second reading, I hope that Mr. Farrant and Madame Daenzer will be in the tribune up there to show to our colleague that we have to put a face on people who suffer very, very badly since a lot of years. So I think we're going to take time to explain really to our colleague the urgent to adopt that bill.
I'd just like to add something to Senator Moncion's last comment in regards to this bill. Without this bill, while there is doctor-patient confidentiality, a lot of mental health care practitioners are reluctant to take on a juror because they themselves don't know where the parameters are of where they can go. And so they would rather not even take that patient on because they don't want to step inside of something that they're afraid could, cause a retrial of something. And so without this law being in place, without this bill passing, I think we'll still see a reluctance of mental health practitioners willing to take on jurors with these issues.
Good point.
Can I just ask a mechanical question, I guess, about the bill itself? Are you laying out any kind of threshold? Does a person need to be, say, diagnosed with a mental illness, or would this apply to jurors, any juror who just wants to reach out to a healthcare professional because they think they need help?
This allows a juror open and fair access to a therapist and mental health. So this is prior to diagnosis. This allows a therapist, it removes the ambiguity, as Tina said, around a therapist's ability to have a dialogue with a juror. because of the legal ramifications. And so jurors have been refused service and counseling because of that threat of legal repercussions. So it removes that ambiguity, and it means that the juror can access counseling through some of the provincially established post-trial mental health supports, can establish, the juror can connect to the public health system through any hospital or a private therapist, but it removes that ambiguity.
Merci. Prochaine question.
Thank you. Our next question, la prochaine question est de Sean Prevost from Global News. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Hi there. Hopefully you all can hear me fine. This question is for both Mr. Farrant and Ms. Daenzer. It's good to see you both again, even though right now I'm on the phone. But I wanted to find out, this is the third time a bill like this has been put forward, both with Mr. Cooper's bill and Senator Boisvenu's bill in the past Parliament, and now this one. What are your thoughts or feelings about these parliamentarians continuing to push for this support time after time? And, you know, they keep bringing this bill up and they're still pushing for it.
Well, we're so grateful for the support of Senator Boisvenu, Senator Moncion, and MP Michael Cooper for continually supporting this bill, but also being champions for jury duty and jury duty reform and some of the other fundamental concerns that surround jury duty and improving the system. This is, again, a measure and a bill to improve jury duty, to make it better, and to deliver on our promise and duty to protect citizens after they've served their country. The bill has been a victim of circumstance. It has not been voted down. It has just never had its opportunity to be heard and to pass. And as Michael Cooper alluded to, there is overwhelming support for this bill across all parties and in both houses. So it has been a victim of circumstances, and this is the right opportunity for this bill to pass.
Okay. Tina, did you want to add anything? I just want to make sure to give the opportunity before going to my next question.
Let's be honest, sometimes the wheels of justice move slowly, but the wheel hasn't fallen off, and we're going to keep it on the track this time.
And this question's for the senators and Mr. Cooper. You know, I guess just as you've mentioned, this bill, there was Bill C-417, there was Bill S-207, now we're on Bill S-206. What sort of support have you already found for this bill this time around that perhaps is giving you that feeling that this will pass? And whether that's in the Senate or Mr. Cooper, if you've been able to get that bipartisan support sort of already set up so when it comes into the House, hopefully, it'll pass again quickly, like what we saw in the House in the 42nd Parliament.
If I may answer, we will prioritize this bill. So Senator Boisvenu and myself have already have an agreement, and we will be speaking quickly on this bill and advocating with our colleagues to move forward with the approval at second reading. One of our colleagues who has been speaking on this bill is Senator Kutcher, and he's a psychiatrist, and he has presented in the last legislature, his comments and the importance of this bill. And we haven't had a lot of senators speaking on this bill, so we know that there are no issues, and what we need to do is really push to have it pass through second reading and sent to committee. So we hope that it's going to be done within the next few weeks.
What I can add is I know my colleague at the Senate, most of them are very sensible about jury, about that duty. And when we ask citizens to be a jury. We don't ask them to be a victim. So I'm sure that our colleague, female and male, very sensible about that. I'm sure that they will hurry the study on second reading and send it to the committee. And I don't think that we need 4 or 5 weeks to study it. We're going to try to do it fast because already we have testimony to prove that bill is very important. So we're going to act I hope, very fast to send that bill to the other chamber.
Yes, and with regards to the House of Commons, the support is there. And nothing has changed in that regard, I don't believe. But we just need time to get it through both places. But when it does come to the House, and I have every confidence that it will get through the Senate, I will work to encourage the government to see this bill passed as expeditiously as possible. This bill does not need any more study. It has been studied thoroughly. There has been a consensus around this bill that it makes sense, that it needs to be done. So I'm hopeful that the government will be supportive in that regard and that we can get this passed as quickly as possible without any further delay.
Merci beaucoup. Prochaine question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no further questions registered at this time. I would now like to turn the meeting back over to you. Nous n'avons plus de questions. De retour à vous la parole.
Merci beaucoup. So this ends the press conference. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup pour votre participation.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Merci. La conférence est maintenant terminée. Veuillez s'il vous plaît raccrocher votre ligne et merci à tous les participants qui se sont joints.